Hi, I'm Mike Beliveau, and today I'm going to be talking to you about these little guys. These are gun flints. And, I just did my beginner's guide to flintlock rifle shooting, and I got a lot of comments, and a number of you asked for more information on flints. And not sure how much more I can tell you, but I'm going to give it a crack. And I will tell you, I find it kind of fascinating that one of mankind's oldest weapons technologies was the key to the age of modern warfare. Because until we had these flints, the flintlock, in the late 17th century, we certainly had guns. There were matchlocks, there were wheel locks. Wheel locks were too expensive and complicated to be practical as a military weapon for the masses. I mean, aristocrats used them, particularly cavalry, but it just was not going to make it as the musket firing mechanism for massed infantry. Matchlocks were effective as long as it wasn't raining, as long as you could get fire to them. They had a lot of problems, but once the flintlock was developed, that mechanism was reliable, it was portable, it was relatively inexpensive to make, and it all came down to one of these. And it still does, and that's what's kind of interesting. So I'm going to talk to you about these. I'm going to tell you a bit about flints, and then we'll take a look at the ways you set them up, what works, what doesn't work. So, hang in there, and it'll be all about flints. We're going to put the flint in flintlock. Well, let's talk about gun flints. Nobody really thinks much about flints until you can't get one. But they're really pretty amazing little pieces of gear. And I think we ought to go right back to the beginning. And I'm going to explain to you what they are, where we get them, and then how we use them. So, this goes all the way back to Paleolithic technology. As I said, this chipping flint to make tools, it's about as old a thing as we have done as organized human beings. So, flint is a type of microcrystalline quartz. It's a sedimentary version of it, and usually you find it in nodules in sedimentary rock, like chalk or limestone. There's really 4 types of this, but only 2 of them, chert and flint, have the properties that make them good for making tools, right? So that made them very important to our Paleolithic ancestors. And of the 2 of them, flint naps better than chert. So I've got to tell you, if you're a fan of Made in the USA, you're pretty much out of luck when it comes to gun flints. There are 2 substantial flint deposits in the United States. One is in northern Texas, and it's called the Alley Bates Flint Deposit, and the other one is in eastern Ohio, and it's known as Vanport Flint. But despite that, I don't know anybody who has made actual commercial flint, gun flints here in the United States. There may be some people that make them for themselves, because people do flint nap. There are quite a few guys who do that as a hobby and make their own flints. But commercially, I'm only aware of one person who was doing it in America. It's a guy named Rich Pierce. And he didn't use flint from either of those flint deposits. He used Missouri chert, which is a white stone. Of course, it's related to flint. But as far as I know, he is no longer making gun flints. And there's no other commercial American maker of actual chipped flint. Now, there is saw-cut agate. Thompson Center used to sell this when they were doing flintlocks. And you can still find it around. You can find it on Track of the Wolf and a few other places. It's not flint, it's not chert. It doesn't work very well, in my opinion. I've not used it for probably 20 years. But I did use a good number of them back in the 70s, at times when real flint was hard to find. and I could find those in a big box store, you know. So I used them, but I don't find they spark very well. And if you have the opportunity not to use them, to use real flint, then you should stay away from them. So the question that we get a lot is, you know, flint comes from two places now, basically. It comes from England and it comes from France. So, you know, English versus French flints, what's better? And boy, that's an argument that goes back and forth, with some people telling you that English flints are better, other people telling you that French flints are better. And here's my take on it. I think that they are so close in performance that it's very hard to call. The rap on French flints is that, and this is a good news, bad news thing, is that they are harder than English flints. And therefore, they can spark better, theoretically. I'll tell you, I've never actually noticed the difference. But theoretically, they can spark better. On the downside, they can wear out your frizzen faster if you don't have a great frizzen, which you should have a great frizzen. So that really shouldn't be a problem. But the other problem is that they are more brittle, which is part of being harder. And therefore, they can dull faster. Now, I'm going to tell you, practically speaking, I've shot a lot more English flints than I have French flints. But I've not seen a whole lot of difference in the way they perform. And I've shot 200-year-old French flints, as well as modern-made French flints. And, you know, they perform about the same as English flints, which is excellent. Okay, now, when it comes to English flints, there are two primary makers that we see here in the United States. I don't know what they'd see in England. There's probably more guys chipping flint out there. But there's Will Black, and there's another guy named Tom Fuller. And they both chip nap black English flint. All right, so here's what that looks like. This is a Tom Fuller black English flint. I cannot tell the difference between the two guys as far as what they make. Some people say that Fuller's the best. Some people say that black is the best. It seems like those are the people who are selling one version or the other, right? So they maybe have a little bit of motivation to say what they're saying. I've shot them both, and I find them to be indistinguishable. But typically, these are found in chalk deposits in England, nodules of flint. They're this nice dark black color, and they are different than French flints. French flints, mostly that we see in this country, are what they call amber flints because of the color, not that there's any amber in it. They are found in a slightly different kind of deposit. There is black flint in France, and there's somebody who's knocking out gun flints out of them. I have not seen them physically, but I've heard of them. So you've got two kinds of English flints, but they both are the same. You've got two kinds of French flints that are markedly different. But I'm quite sure that you'll find that the French black flint is very much like the English black flint. So I say whatever you can get, go for it. And there's really no reason not to. They're all good. In fact, the reason I even have any French flints around, because I usually get the black flints from Track of the Wolf. I have these French flints around because I needed 1-inch flints for one of my fowlers, and everybody was out of the 1-inch English flints, but I saw that there was availability of French flints, so I bought a half dozen of them, and I'm sure they're going to work just fine for me. Flints come in various sizes. The smartest thing you can do when you get a new gun, if it has a flint in it and that flint is properly fitted, is to pull it out and measure it and write it down somewhere. If you don't know what size flint your gun takes, the best thing for you to do is to go to Track of the Wolf and go to their flint section. And they are going to break down all of Tom Fuller's flints. He's probably got 7 or 8 sizes of these things. And they're going to tell you what locks or production guns they fit on. So that is a great resource. It's on the Track of the Wolf website, and even if you don't buy from them, at least you'll know what size flint your gun takes. Keep track of that and buy it. And I have a lot of flintlocks, so I've got all these different size ones. And obviously you're going to use, you know, bigger stuff in a Brown Bess than you would in a plain rifle or you know, in a pistol, right? So probably the most common size for normal rifles, you know, sporting rifles, Kentuckys, Hawkins, that sort of thing, are 7/8 inch long flints. And these will fit a large Siler lock, a lot of the L&R locks. So if in doubt and you can't figure out what you got, order 7/8, and if they don't fit, you can go up or down from there. Just order one and try it from Track, and you can pick your flint that way. Okay, so to put a flint on a lock, I'll try to do this so you can see it. You unscrew the jaws. Right, so I'm just going to loosen the screw up. And you can remove the old flint and put in a new one. And while we're doing this, I want to talk to you about how you keep the flint in the jaws. Okay, flint has got to be wrapped with something malleable that can give a good grip when it's inside the jaws of the cock. And there are two things that do that. So if you buy a Pedersoli gun, it will come with lead flint wraps, okay? So if you can see right there, this flint is wrapped in lead the same way this flint is wrapped in leather. Now, the good thing about this, or at least what purports to be the good thing, is that it's supposedly a more solid hold because there's no give to the lead. So it can't bounce around like in spongy leather, right? There we go. Just broke off about half of that flint, I think. So anyway, lead gives a good firm grip. And that's true up to a point. And it's up to the point where it doesn't anymore. I actually prefer leather because what I find with lead, and I'll use it, I've got a number of Pedersoli guns and I use it till it stops working. But what happens with lead is you get it compressed to a point where it won't tighten anymore. And it actually kind of loses its gripping ability. And the flint just flies out. And have had that happen to me. Okay, I'm going to slow that down and just watch. There's that flint flying right out of the lead jaw pads. And that just happened time after time that day. I make flint wraps out of very thin leather. It's like a 1 ounce. You'd probably go up to 3 ounces, you'd be fine. Right? It provides good coverage, good grip. It's not too thick. Okay, so we've got the jaws of the cock, and they are tightened or loosened with this screw. Right? So I'm going to set the flint in. By the way, I always notch the rear of the leather so I can get the flint as close to the jaw screw as possible. All right. Just going to tighten that screw down a little bit. Now, okay, so you can see I'm pretty much pointed inside the pan, which is where I want to be, but I'm scraping the edge of the barrel, right? So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to move my flint a little more to the outside. Okay, so now I'm going down cleanly. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check my alignment to the frizzen. I want the straight edge, the blade of the flint, to be in contact with the frizzen the whole length of it. So I don't want it to be canted, to one side or the other, right? So once I've got that, it's not easy to do with the camera here. I'm going to tighten it completely. Because I don't want to lose it. Beautiful. Good shower sparks. So that's exactly what I want, and that is working fine. Right, so that's how you align it. And it's really no big deal. Now, you'll hear some talk about bevel up or bevel down. So let me show you that. I'm going to loosen this up. This right now is bevel down, right? So the bevel, the slanty part, is pointed down. I think you'll find that is most common, but it kind of depends on your lock's geometry, because it may like one or the other better. Now if I turn around, I'm going to be bevel up. As you can see, I'm hitting farther forward as far as where the center of my flint is pointing. Get lined up. See, this is what I talked about getting it lined up before. I'm at an angle right now where I don't want to be. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to show you what happens when you go bevel up. And this is why on some locks you're going to like it. So I'm bevel up right now, and you can see that I'm hitting higher up on the frizzen than I was when I was beveled down. That means I'm going to rake more of the frizzen. Right, I'm going to rake it from here all the way down, which could give me a better shower of sparks. But the geometry might also be that it won't flip the frizzen. We'll see. Okay, so that did well. Sometimes it'll hang up because there's simply too much flint that way. Now I could get away with a shorter flint. So if you find yourself with a short flint, you could try bevel up it, and that'll actually make it perform as if it's a longer flint, marginally anyway. All right, a lot of people ask me, how many shots should I expect to get off of a flint? And boy, that really varies, because it depends on a number of things. It depends on how hard your frizzen is, depends on how powerful your frizzen spring is. If that spring is too strong, this is going to resist the flint more, and it's going to wear faster, right? But if it's a well-tuned lock, I would expect to get probably 20 shots before I even have to think about resharpening a flint. And you should be able to get 50 shots from a flint if everything is going well. I've heard of people getting 100. But, right now we're pretty sharp. Right, so I'm getting a good shower of sparks in there. Right, everything is fine. But you're going to hit a point where you're not going to get that, because this edge is going to become dulled from hitting that steel. So what do? Well, all I do is I just take the back of my knife and I just do that. All right, I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of hard to see. But I've got little flakes of flint coming off. And what happens is you reestablish a sharp edge. And you're full of sparks again. And that's how you sharpen a flint that's gone dull. How often can you do that? Some flints only once, some flints 2-3 times. It's going to depend on the flint, because it is, after all, it is a natural product, and they all have different flaws and vary in different ways. So I think that is everything that I've got to teach you about flints. I hope you found today's video useful, interesting. We've got some good stuff coming up on the channel, but if you like this stuff, you know, give it a thumbs up, right? It helps us out with the algorithm, the all-important algorithm. So I appreciate it. Feel free to comment on it, whether it's positive or negative. I'll try to respond if it's something that's respondable. And, you know, we'll take it from there. I always enjoy the interaction that I have with you. If you're not a subscriber, by all means subscribe. We'd love to have you. So we've got some stuff coming up in the future. On the flintlock front, I'm going to take that English Fowler that you saw in today's video, the 12 gauge, and I'm going to be doing a video on the, what I'd call the frontier effectiveness of the 12 bore gun. And I'm going to have a little bit of fun with that. I'm going to shoot clay birds. I'm going to shoot a deer-sized target. And I'm going to shoot a man-sized silhouette at various yards with the smooth bore using shot and round ball, bare balls, and we're going to see how it would have performed on the 18th century frontier. So stay tuned for that. And until next week, bye.